This is Zero Station, broadcasting across the world to the Allied, Axis and Sino-Soviet Union blocs, as well as the countries of the Neutral Nations Organization.
Hello and welcome to episode 6 of Zero Station, the Dust Warfare podcast from Unit Forward. My name is Alex, and in today's episode I'm going to kick off by talking a bit about the UK Open. You might have seen the recent news that the Open has been shifted to later in 2014. I'll explain a bit about why that happened and what the plan now is. After that, I'll talk a bit about Tactics Battlefield, the new gridless take on Dust Tactics, and why it's not a replacement for Dust Warfare. Okay, time to record. Let's go! Okay, so to kick off today's show, I'm going to talk a bit about the UK Open, which was supposed to take place at UK Games Expo in Birmingham on June the 1st, and will now not take place at UK Games Expo in Birmingham on June 1st. It's been put off until later on in 2014, and so I'm going to talk about some of the factors that led me to that decision, why I've decided to put off the Open until later in the year. And to start with, I'm going to talk about tickets. Basically, only one ticket was sold for the Open since tickets went on sale on March 16th. Obviously, you can't have a tournament with only one person. Now, I don't know exactly why people hadn't bought their ticket yet for the Open. Especially as I'm recording this, there are only 6 weeks to go until the UK Games Expo. But a theory that I do have is that it is due to ticket prices, because normally for a Dust Warfare event you'd expect the ticket price to be probably £6 to £7, maybe no more than £10, for a ticket, I suppose. But to play in the UK Open, you'd have to pay £17, £8 for the tournament price itself, and £9 to actually get into the expo in the first place, so you could play. So yeah, £17 for a Dust Warfare tournament is kind of high at this stage in the game's development in the UK. The game is, it's fairly popular. People, generally know what Dust is. It could be more popular, obviously, but, people generally know now, what Dust is, and, they know about, the game and everything, and about tactics as well, and all that stuff. But it's not 40k popular. Dust isn't at that kind of level of popularity where people will happily drop even up to £20-25 to play in a 2-day tournament or something. So £17 for a 1-day tournament was kind of high. I didn't think it was going to be that high when I first decided to start arranging the event. But then I found out about UK Games Expo's policies and all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes, and then I found that, the price was, set by them, that, if they provide price support, then the price will be £8. Without price support, the price would have actually been £6. But hey, £15 is still too much to pay, I think, for a Dust Warfare tournament. And it clearly wasn't going to work. 6 weeks before the event, one ticket sold. So, I decided to email the organisers and ask them to cancel the event so I could, organise it for later in the year. So yeah, I think ticket prices were way too high for the game, for a Dust Warfare tournament at this stage of Dust Warfare's kind of development, its popularity in the UK so far. Now, I think another issue with holding the Open at this time of the year was terrain. The UKGE organisers said that they will provide tables, of course, and also they'll provide green tablecloths, mats, not really mats, but kind of green coverings for the tables, which could easily simulate grass, although that would mean that every table is a grass table, I suppose. But they could provide that, but I would have to provide terrain and all the other little bits and pieces that go towards a tournament, like the computer for keeping track of standings and all that stuff. I mean, I've got a little netbook which I was going to use for the tournament, which I'm still going to use for the tournament later on in the year. But yeah, getting the terrain was going to be an issue. A couple of guys stepped up and offered to help, which I'm really grateful for. That was really generous of them. They said they'd help to try and get terrain together for the tournament. but it wasn't going to be enough. I mean, with 16 players, 8 tables, it wasn't going to be enough terrain to for the whole tournament. And it's not really fair to rely on just 1 or 2 people to alongside myself to provide terrain for the whole thing. So yeah, I think terrain was another issue why it wasn't going to work at UK Games Expo this year. And I do say this year because I plan to try again next year and try to get the UK Open. We'll try to get an event at UK Games Expo next year. But yeah, terrain was going to definitely be an issue. I have some terrain, but not a whole lot of it. Maybe just about a table's worth of terrain, because I play at my local game store, Darksphere, when I do get a chance to play Dust Warfare. And at home, I've only really got enough terrain to make videos for Unit Forward, which doesn't actually require a whole 6x4 tables worth of terrain. So I could supply a table at most. The other guys could supply maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 tables of terrain. So I mean, overall, the terrain issue was kind of shaky. So yeah, that wasn't going to work out too well. So part of the plan is actually to when the UK Open is rescheduled, part of the plan is to actually hold it somewhere where there is already terrain. So somewhere like maybe Tabletop Nation or the Northwest Gaming Center or somewhere like that where they have terrain there already, and we don't have to worry about trying to scramble to find terrain to get enough terrain for the tournament. Okay, now another factor I think that contributed to the delay of the UK Open was promotion or lack thereof. Now some of this is my fault. I didn't promote the event or haven't promoted the event thus far as much as I probably could have. Although I have posted news on Unit Forward, talked about it on social media and that kind of thing, and I did get in touch also with people that I know and asked them to say a couple of words about the UK Open, that it's happening, let people know about it. But I think that the event could have been promoted a lot better, and it will be when the new event is announced and everything. Then over the summer it is going to be promoted a lot more than it has been. A lot more kind of in your face. You can't forget about it. It is happening. Even if you don't play Dust Warfare, you'll know that this thing is happening. That kind of thing. But yeah, promotion is definitely a thing. And also some things that I'm going to change, like behind the scenes, when promoting the event as well. Some ideas I have to really get it out there and get people to come to this event. But yeah, the UK Open is still going to take place in 2014, as I said. It's going to take place, not in Birmingham, but it's going to take place somewhere else in the UK. I'm actually going to ask a lot more questions, regarding things like locations and, how easy it is for people to get to places and, things like ticket prices as well. Because, when you organize something like this, then you can't just say, right, this is how it's been set out and, that's that. You have to kind of communicate with people and ask them, like, what do you think a fair ticket price is? Can you easily get to this place or that place? Or, you have to kind of work with people to get a good balance of things. So you get a successful event in the end. But I think it's going to be a good tournament when it does take place later in 2014. It'll be kind of fun to have a tournament at that time of the year as well. Because at the moment, this is convention season, it's show season, loads of stuff happens at this time of the year when I'm recording this, April 2014. All these different events and, tournaments and things are happening. And then when you get to later in the year, like, September into October, November into December even, nothing really happens. All the shows have happened. They're all done for the year. Nothing really takes place. So to have a tournament at that time of the year will be pretty nice, I think. But as I said on the website, plans are already underway to, organize the new event and hopefully make it, a big success. And I hope that, Dust Warfare players will respond and, book tickets for the event and, come down and play, basically. And, support Dust Warfare. Because, the more events that take place, the more support there is, for going to tournaments and things like that, then the more the game grows in this country. And, it applies to any country, not just the UK, obviously. The more that the game is played at tournaments, privately, the more people talk about it, all that kind of stuff, then, the better it is for everyone playing that game. Okay, so those were a few factors that went into the cancellation of the UKGE event. and why the event's going to be rescheduled for later in the year. Of course, keep an eye on Unit Forward for news about the new event, and also it's going to be announced in other places as well. There'll be like press releases. Well, I don't know if you could call it a press release, but information will be sent to places like Tabletop Gaming News, Beasts of War, all those sorts of places. So hopefully they'll post up news about the new event. So keep an eye out for that as well. The plan is to reschedule the event for around, I would say, maybe September, October, or November. One of those months, basically after the summer, going into the autumn. Because in the summer, people are off on holiday, and it's really hard to organize things during the summer. And also this year is also a Football World Cup year, which is also going to take away a lot of weekends, and basically a lot of people will be focused on that. They'll be watching the World Cup, and they're not going to be interested in playing tabletop games all that much during the World Cup, I wouldn't think. So yeah, I'm purposefully avoiding World Cup season, purposefully avoiding the summer when everyone's off and on holiday doing stuff. And yeah, I'm trying to reschedule for after the summer, sometime in the autumn months. Okay, now I'm going to talk about Dust Tactics Battlefield, which is going to be in the new 2nd edition Dust Tactics book, and it is what people have so far been calling gridless tactics. Basically, Dust Tactics Battlefield is the gridless way, the open terrain, freeform way to play Dust Tactics. And basically, the development of Dust Tactics Battlefield kind of links into Dust Warfare in a way, and even further back than that. Basically, when Dust Tactics came out, when it first came out, like, the AEG, press releases, AEG never actually released Dust Tactics. It was given on to Fantasy Flight Games before it ever came out as an AEG product. But way back when, AEG was doing the promotion for Dust Tactics, and that is the same AEG that now makes, Smash Up and Love Letter and all those kinds of games. They were originally going to publish Dust Tactics. And the big long box, the original core set, was actually going to be an AEG product. They actually designed that product, but then, the whole thing was given over to FFG, assigned to FFG, and Fantasy Flight Games put a sticker over the AEG logo and sold it as their product. But anyway, way back in 2010, when AEG was doing promotional material, they had actually announced plans to provide a kind of like a gridless supplement to Dust Tactics. So you'd have Dust Tactics, and then you'd have this kind of like a pamphlet, basically like a PDF that showed you how to play the game without a grid. So obviously that never happened. Dust Tactics came out in 2010, and it seems that Dust Studio and Palo Parente wanted a way to, for people to play Dust Tactics without a grid, like a war game. So they asked FFG, basically, can you develop us a gridless version of Dust Tactics? And FFG said, okay, fine. Dust Warfare was first announced at Gen Con 2011 because, Gen Con, because it's FFG, and FFG announces everything at Gen Con. Gen Con is their bread and butter. It's their, their whole world, basically. So, yeah, they announced Dust Warfare at Gen Con 2011 and set about, working on Dust Warfare, on, this kind of gridless version of Dust Tactics, essentially. But what Fantasy Flight actually did was was basically a war game based on Dust. They actually created a war game that is based on Dust Tactics, but isn't just Dust Tactics without a grid. And of course, it turned out superbly, in my opinion, and many other people's opinion as well. I mean, the team was stellar. Andy Chambers, Mac Martin, Alessio Cavatore. I've seen some people say that that having so many people involved with the game, so many designers involved with the game, kind of ruined it a little bit, which I completely disagree with. I think that the input of all these people, all these talented people, really improved the game. Of course, Andy Chambers wrote the basic framework. Mac Martin later refined it after Andy Chambers handed it off to FFG. And Alessio Cavatore was the editor on the project, and he had a lot of other talented people working on it as well. But yeah, I mean, for FFG designed Dust Warfare and produced that, and it seems that it wasn't exactly what Dust Studio was looking for. What they basically wanted was kind of what AEG originally wanted. They wanted Dust Tactics to be, the grid game, this kind of, the board game, and then have rules on top to allow people to play without a grid. That's basically all Dust Studio seemed to want. They wanted it to be more unified. Whereas FFG created a superb game, but a game that's kind of based on Dust Tactics, not a continuation of Dust Tactics, if that makes sense. So it seems now that Dust Tactics Battlefield is the kind of the logical conclusion of what Dust Studio wanted all that time ago. It's not a separate game from Dust Tactics. It pretty much is Dust Tactics without a grid. And I think that's where there's been a lot of confusion about, will it replace Warfare? Will it be, the kind of the default gridless Dust game now, and all that kind of stuff. I don't think it will be. It's not a replacement for Dust Warfare. I mean, the whole point about Dust Tactics Battlefield is that if you know how to play Dust Tactics, then you know how to play Battlefield. Because once you've learned Dust Tactics and all the rules and blah, 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 for playing on the grid, then Battlefield will take away the grid and it'll be the same game without a grid. That's basically what Battlefield is. It's basically Dust Tactics version 2.0 without a grid. Now, of course, I don't have the book yet. I plan to get the book when it comes out to have a read through and see what it's all about. But I haven't got the book in my hands yet, so I can't talk about specifics. Although there are PDFs that Battlefront has already released that show the Dust Tactics rules from the book, the table of contents, the special rules. But cunningly they've left out the Dust Tactics Battlefield rules, which you'll have to get the book to read. And when the book does come out, then I'm going to do a video about the book, basically do a flick through of the book to show you what's inside, what it looks like. And I'm also going to do another video that more thoroughly compares Warfare to Battlefield. But from what I've seen so far, this isn't a Dust Warfare replacement. It's not a Dust Warfare killer, in big air quotes. It's nothing like that. Dust Warfare is, still its own game. It's still a part of the Dust universe. And it's not going to go away unless players want it to go away, that is. I mean, any game can go away if people stop playing it, right? So if you want Dust Warfare to live on, then you have to keep on playing the game, introducing others to the game. Battlefront has said that there will be PDFs. Same kind of idea as Achilles, player-tested PDFs, which I'm not a huge fan of. I prefer that there will be like a small beta test team testing the PDFs, maybe, gathered from community members. But hey, as long as there are PDFs coming out, then that's the main thing, right? And of course, there will be, cards inserted in each box from now on, not just the Babylon models, but also the reissues as well. So, for example, the Axis Zombies, the Königsluthor, models like that, the reissues from, the Battlefront versions of the FFG boxes, basically, the reissues. They're going to have Dust Warfare cards inserted into those as well. So the idea is that from now on, whenever you buy a Dust Miniatures box, then, it'll have both Dust Tactics and Dust Warfare cards inside, whether it's Babylon or not. So yeah, I mean, there is still support for Dust Warfare. I mean, yeah, we don't get a new rulebook. We don't get a new shiny rulebook like Dust Tactics is getting. But at the same time, maybe that's not such a bad thing. Dust Tactics is, or has been, in a bit of turmoil concerning the rules lately, because there have been a lot of changes to the rules. So much so that some people are now calling the FFG version of Dust Tactics Dust Classic, and the new one, Dust Tactics or Dust Tactics 2.0 or whatever. Because the two versions of the game, the FFG version and the Battlefront version, are so kind of different to each other. And Battlefront certainly has added a lot to the new tactics. They've added reactions, for crying out loud. It looks like Dust Tactics Battlefield is going to have suppression, so they're clearly taking cues from Dust Warfare and bringing them into Dust Tactics. And this has actually kind of annoyed some Dust Tactics players because they liked Dust Tactics because it was a blood sport, basically. It was fast, brutal, things died quickly. It was almost like army chess in a way. That, things, the way things moved around the battlefield, things, got shot at, things died quickly, all that kind of stuff. And now it's been turned into this kind of slightly slower game with more rules on top. and also more dice as well. I mean, you know, I've seen people say that, you know, who've really kind of looked into the rules, that, you know, some units are now throwing like 35, 40 dice or something, which is insane. So the Battlefront Dust Tactics seems to be, you know, a different beast from the FFG Dust Tactics. But as Paolo Parente keeps saying, it's closer to his vision of what Dust Tactics is supposed to be. And he said the same thing about Dust Battlefield in relation to Dust Warfare as well. That FFG didn't create the game that fits in with his vision of how a gridless Dust game should be. Which I think is kind of unfair to current Dust Warfare players, because, you know, if Paolo Parente wanted something other than Dust Warfare when it came out, why didn't he just cancel the project and tell FFG, no, this isn't what I want. I want this. I want something else. I want something different. I don't want what you've made. But he let the project go ahead. He let it, you know, go on sale, probably because he knew that it would draw in all the wargamers. And now that, you know, all those thousands of pounds have been, well, thousands of dollars, I suppose, have been put into Dust Warfare, you know, have been put into the game because of Dust Warfare. Now, I suppose he thinks it's time for, you know, for his real vision of gridless Dust to, you know, to be released. And, you know, that's kind of like, well, you know, tough. Dust Warfare is a thing. It's real. It's here. And, you know, it's a great game. So, you know, people will continue to play Dust Warfare. Regardless of some artist's vision of how Dust, you know, how gridless Dust should be. But yeah, as I said, Dust Warfare is going to live on. It's not going to be replaced by Dust Tactics Battlefield unless people allow it to be replaced by Dust Tactics Battlefield. And we do have everything that we need to play right now. You know, we have the rules, we have the cards, we have PDFs, models. So yeah, I mean, why not go out and enjoy Dust Warfare? We have stable rules, which I was just alluding to, that, you know, Dust Tactics rules are kind of in flux, that people are kind of trying to get used to the new changes, whereas the Dust Warfare rules are still pretty much the same rules as, you know, as they have been for the last 2 years. So, you know, the rules are stable. And so, yeah, I mean, why not go out and enjoy Dust Warfare? Battlefield isn't going to replace it. Battlefield is basically a different game. It's basically Dust Tactics. There are still only two Dust games. People think there are now 3. Because there's Tactics, Tactics Battlefield, and Warfare. But Tactics and Tactics Battlefield are the same game. It's just one uses a grid, the other one doesn't. But the idea is that's basically how it's designed. You know, it's meant to be, you know, one game, but, you know, you can play either grid or gridless. Whereas Dust Warfare is more of a game based on Dust Tactics, but doesn't exactly play like it. But all the same, it's awesome. So yeah, why not go out and play Dust Warfare? You know, introduce it to people. You know, Dust Warfare has really become our game, and I said this recently on a post on Unit Forward, in which I talked about the second birthday. You know, Dust Warfare's second birthday, which happened, you know, last Friday as I'm recording this, April 18th. Dust Warfare is now 2 years old, and it really has become, you know, our game, the player's game. Like, you know, basically it's up to us now to, you know, to push it forward, to make it impossible to ignore. And, you know, basically to get people into it and, you know, show them how awesome this game really is. So, yeah, that was a look at Dust Tactics Battlefield and why it's not going to replace Dust Warfare. Okay, that was episode 6 of Zero Station. As always, thank you very much for listening. Before I go today, I want to make a quick mention of another site that I recently opened that I want to give a quick plug for. You may have heard me mention Firestorm Armada a few times on Zero Station, that I also play Firestorm Armada. It's a great space combat game set in the far future, without any kind of grim, dark bits to it at all. It's made by Spartan Games, and I recently opened a website for it called Fleet Signal, which you can find at fleetsignal.com. So, you know, if you're interested in, you know, space combat, or maybe just curious about, you know, what Firestorm Armada is all about and all that kind of stuff, then, you know, head over to fleetsignal.com, check it out. You know, I'm making videos for Fleet Signal as well. You know, unboxings for now, and then eventually, you know, more in-depth videos about, you know, how to play Firestorm Armada, strategy, tactics, all that kind of stuff. That's all going to follow. So yeah, if you're interested in space at all, space combat, then check out fleetsignal.com. Okay, so as always, the email address to get in touch with me for anything Dust, anything Zero Station related, anything at all really, is hello@unitforward.com. And you can also find Unit Forward on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Google+, AppNet. The account name is Unit Forward on all those things, so it's usually going to be servicename.com/unitforward, twitter.com/unitforward, etc., etc. Okay, so I think that's about it for this episode, and until the next one, see ya! This podcast is released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 3.0 Unported license. That means you can give this podcast to anyone you want as long as the author is credited, but you can't make your own episode and you can't use this episode for commercial purposes without the author's permission.